When you think of a network-attached storage, a NAS, what do you imagine? Probably a big bulky server with stacks of hard drives and wires going everywhere. But what if a whole server could be in the form factor of a small, elegant smart home control panel? Now for this project I'll be using the Zimmer board 2. This will be the main processor. By utilizing this PCIe slot, I can attach two small 1TB SSDs and keep the form factor tiny. And here it is. I also got some accessories, but this is the thing that we're interested in. So let's quickly have a look at this. Got all of your lovely accessories. This is the server. Oh, it's hefty. I can initially tell that the build quality of this is really good. So here it is. It's a big slab of aluminum with a really powerful computer just inside of this. So inside of here, we've got an N150 quad-core x86 chip, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that just means really quite good. You have dual SATA 3.0 ports, you've got two 2.5GB Ethernet slots, there's a mini display port that can do 4K video, but the most interesting part of this is a PCIe slot right here. You can attach GPUs to this, you can attach expansion modules, you can use this for pretty much whatever you'd like. There is a power limit, I think it's 25 watts, which should be plenty unless you're planning to run a full GPU on this, and for that you will need an external power supply. Now, for those who don't know what a NAS is, imagine you're plugging in a USB stick into your computer, except it's wireless and has terabytes of capacity. All you have to do is plug this into your router and it connects to your computer automatically. It either connects to your computer or everybody's computers who are using your Wi-Fi, but that depends on how you configure it, of course. So let's get started straight away, let's take this apart and take a look at the inside of the board. I'll start off with these four screws here on the sides. Okay, they don't do much. The ones at the bottom probably keep it together, so let's try those instead. So Zimmer Space have provided these screwdrivers, but I'll use my own. Ooh, this PCB is looking quite nice. There's the CMOS battery, and there's a BIOS reset switch. This connector is where you plug your fan into. My honest thoughts about this fan is that it seems like a very well implemented afterthought. The way it connects to the board is a little odd, but it does its job, and it's not too janky. Oh, is there another screw somewhere? Under the battery maybe? Ah, yep. Okay, so this thermal paste seems to be a little bit off. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but maybe the heat is only generated in this little area. I'll just add more later. Ooh, it's actually interesting how they made the top shell conform to all of these parts here. I was expecting to see a big thermal pad, but for the best thermal performance, you'd obviously want the metal to be as close to all the different chips as possible. So there are two things I could do to get this board into a big metal enclosure. I can keep the Zimmer board in its own case and design around it, or I can take the PCB out and just use that, getting rid of the original case. So by taking out the PCB, the thermal performance would be a lot better and it will be much slimmer. But when designing the area that touches the dies, if the metal is just half a millimeter too close to this N150, it might crack the die. And if it's half a millimeter too far, this gap has the potential to absolutely destroy the thermal performance. Now I could fill that gap in with thermal paste or use a thick thermal pad, which at best could work perfectly well, or at worst make this processor overheat in minutes. You know what? We don't take the easy way in this channel, let's make our own heatsink and enclosure. If the mounting pressure isn't too high, the die should be completely safe. Fortunately, Iceway will provide a step file for the PCB, which should make designing the enclosure a lot easier. Now to get this big adapter to fit, I have to cut it down to length. I know cutting a PCB sounds a bit insane, but actually there aren't any traces running along the edge of a board. This whole area of PCBs is just for mounting the NVMEs. Now we only need to score the board just enough so we can bend it and have it break on its own. Now, obvious disclaimer, this is fiberglass, so be careful when cutting it. I suggest wearing a respirator and having a decent amount of ventilation. Finally, I removed the threaded inserts and placed them at the 30mm point, which will fit the small NVMEs that I plan on using. Alright, now that this is shortened, I'm ready to find a display and design the enclosure. Ah yes, the liquid crystal display. Amazing. So it looks like here we do need a 90-degree DisplayPort adapter, because this just doesn't fit in here at all. Alright, so I'll keep this mounting plate to be plastic, just in case I need to make any changes later on. Reprinting this mount will be a lot easier than ordering a new CNC'd enclosure. I'll be using this blower fan in a slightly interesting way. I'm using its intake to cool down the SSDs, and the exhaust to cool down the heatsink. Now you might be wondering why the heatsink has a flat end. That's because this whole thing will pretty much be completely sealed away. And instead of transferring most of the heat energy to the air, most of it will actually just pass through this copper and into the aluminum enclosure. That way the heat can radiate from all around the enclosure, and will radiate away completely passively. The fan will mostly just circulate the air around in circles, but the aluminum enclosure will also absorb the energy from the air and pass it straight through into the surroundings. There are ventilation holes at the back, but these will definitely be covered when this thing is mounted to a wall. There'll be 2 switches here, one for the display and one for the main power button. To power the display, I also need to leech 5 volts out of a couple amps somewhere on this board, and luckily this HDD power connector can supply enough power. Also, to recess slightly further into the back of the board, so even if there is a flush metal wall on this board, the cable can still bend up and out of the way. Alright, so let's get this whole thing assembled and we can do a first power on test. I won't be able to power this on for very long as obviously there is no heatsink, but at least you can test if it works or not. Alright, the plan is to plug in the cable from that into this Raspberry Pi. The LED on here should tell us if this is wired correctly, and then this USB has to be quickly plugged into this monitor to see if this monitor works. Oh yeah, obviously this doesn't have a power on LED. Alright, let's try it on one of my boards. I don't really care if this dies or not. Alright, nice. There's the LED. Let's quickly turn this off. Now I'll plug in the monitor. So this SSD might be a little bit small, so let's hope it still gets cooled by the fan. Now my plan is to make this display either show Pi-hole statistics, which is a really powerful network ad blocker, or make this a hub for Home Assistant. Of course, I will be running multiple of these applications all at once in a stack, including those 2, TrueNAS, Jellyfin, Nginx, and several others. Now, for those eagle-eyed among you, you might have spotted that this monitor has bezels which are all over the place. They're just not even at all. To compensate for this, I had to shift around the pocket for the screen. I uploaded these parts to Justway and had to wait for them to get manufactured and shipped. Now that the CNC parts have arrived, I could tap the holes and assemble the project. This is the first time I've got parts like this powder coated, and I think the surface finish of this just can't be beaten. And it's also super durable. Neither Justway or Zimmerspace have told me to say anything in particular, so here are my honest opinions rather than a sponsored segment. So for Justway, personally, I'd really recommend them for your projects, especially their 3D printing services. SLS, resin, and FDM parts are all incredibly cheap, and this heatsink mount was 3D printed from aluminum and was only about $20. SLS nylon parts are also incredibly affordable, they can reproduce geometries that are impossible with FDM, and are quite a bit stronger. For more advanced projects, Justway also specialise in CNC milling of metal, which is more expensive but leads to the strongest and best looking parts as you see here. Check out Justway through the link in the description and use the code Justway at Magmabow10 for a $10 discount on all prototyping services over $30. And while you're at it, make sure to check out the Zimmer board too. There's a $15 discount code with the affiliate code Magmabow15. Oh, and ignore these scuffs, I definitely did not drop this. Now this huge empty space wasn't intentional, but this cavity is actually perfect for more storage, for example small hard drives like this or 2.5-inch SSDs. And before you comment, yes, I know a 1TB NAS is like nothing, this technically goes up to 4TB, which still isn't a crazy amount, but for what I need, this is more than enough. The server will most likely just be for backups rather than bulk storage of every single file to ever exist. Now all I had to do was set up the software, mount this to a wall, and before powering it on, I just had to check if you are subscribed. Wait, you're not? You've made it this far into the video and you haven't subscribed yet? But seriously though, if you want to see more videos like this on your homepage, consider liking and subscribing. It's also the best motivation for me to keep working on better and better videos. Anyways, this is the NAS. So thank you for watching the video and please consider subscribing. We would not have reached 10k without all of your help. Anyways, I hope to see you guys next time.